This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on highlights of the Indian Economic Review 2024. The participants are Shankar, Aiyar, Economic Analyst, and Rajesh, Laikh, Anchor.
A warm welcome to you, Mr. Aiyar, to our program where we are discussing the highlights of the Indian Economic Review 2024. So can you provide a brief overview of the key economic highlights featured in the Indian Economic Review for the year 2024?
Well, the most important thing about the Indian Economic Review is that it is a clean, crisp review of the past and the present and takes a look at the future. What it does is it frames the issues within three different time periods, which is the pre-2014 reforms was done, what needed to be done, the action taken between 2014 and 2024, and what are the challenges ahead. So it is a very well written, the data points are all in place, it is not parabolic or exaggerative in nature, it looks at the world as it is and the Indian economy as it is. It is, after all, a political document, so all the political touch points are maintained. The important thing to me was that it gives the reader a sense of confidence and yet also sort of underlines the challenges that were overcome and the challenges that we face ahead.
Okay, you mentioned the past, the future, the present. So I interpret this as past as a learning and present as how we can execute the current based on that learning, and future, how can we incorporate the relevance that has been there in the past. So how is this reflected, the past, present and future, in the Economic Review? If you could demonstrate it with some examples.
So the most telling feature of the Indian economy is the rise in the investment rates and how that has defined the economic trajectory of growth. So if we look at just about maybe 2 decades back, till about 2008, till the global financial crisis, India had a good investment rate, it had a good consumption rate, it had a good bank credit rate, and then everything sort of started sliding downhill. The banks were overladen with non-performing assets, there were too much rollover, and then the problems started. As a matter of fact, between 2011 and 12, the investment rates actually plummeted, and by 2015 or so, India was faced with what is called a twin balance sheet problem, which is that it had a high level of fiscal deficit, it had a very high level of NPAs in the banks. So neither the government nor the private sector could invest. So the government took certain steps, moved along, cleaned up bank balance sheets, passed the insolvency and bankruptcy code, which is, I must say, still work in progress, and sort of made the investments possible. If you look at the investments by the government in very critical infrastructure necessary for growth, so what they married the need of the economy for the future, which is infrastructure, and with the need to propel growth, and so they invested in infrastructure. So in the last 7 years, the government has invested something to the tune of 67 trillion rupees or 67 lakh crores in infrastructure. And it is expected to double this over the next 7 years according to a CRISIL report. Now this investment has propelled consumption, industrial growth, and has created the pathway for the economy to sort of move on. So we have a very phenomenal data point in this. I mean, India had 74 airports till about 2014. That has doubled in the last 9 years. The number of universities, which is about human capital, has gone up from 720 something to 1100. There are more girls enrolled in schools. There are more women in higher level of education. The Jan Dhan Yojana undertaken by following the induction of Aadhaar has created 51 crore new account holders, and these account holders, a bulk of them are actually women. Then you pad it up, next layer comes is the differentiated welfare program. So agriculture was not viable, so in the last 5 years we've had the PM Kisan Samman Nidhi. We had a need to empower women. So the Dignity for Women program, which is a Swachh Bharat scheme, was pushed. Indians needed health coverage, so Ayushman Bharat was pushed. Now, a lot of these have also addressed the need of the population, but has also addressed the aspect of economic growth. So if you look at the graphics, you see very interestingly, the macro fundamentals have improved over the last few years. Both the bank balance sheets and the Government of India's balance sheet has improved. That is not to say that all the problems are over. We still have a situation where rural demand is lagging behind urban demand, and that has to be addressed.
So, in light of what you just elaborated, what are the notable trends and changes in the key macroeconomic indicators, such as the GDP growth, inflation, and unemployment, as discussed in the 2024 review?
Despite the pandemic, despite the sudden rise in interest rates because of what was happening in the US and Europe, in a very high interest rate environment, India has managed to hold on to its growth. And that is hugely commendable. India is one of the few large economies which had a consistent 6+% growth. And in fact, in the last 3 years, we've grown at 7+%, and probably the Reserve Bank Governor says that next year we could still grow at 7%. So that would be amazing. So the GDP trajectory is steady and at around 7. We are the fastest growing large economy. Okay. And we are cruising at an altitude that is sustainable but can be improved. The second part that you would see is that how does the economy chug along? It chugs along on the basis of bank credit. And if you look at bank credit, it's now at 13.5% more than that. And non-food credit at that level suggests that there is investment happening. Now, this credit could be going to the infrastructure projects. It could be going to the companies which are executing infrastructure projects. And that is reflected also in the share market valuations of the public sector units, and their own health has improved. And then the economy is in a way primed for growth if you look at the data. The 2 points of any economy, whether it is an individual economy or institutional company or the national economy, the 2 points of reference would be how much money do you earn and how much money do you owe. And on both those factors, the Indian economy seems to be doing decent.
Okay. Now let's get into the sectoral analysis. What insights does the review offer regarding the performance and challenges faced by 1, the industrial sector, 2, the agriculture sector, and 3, the services sector?
So the primary worry for the Indian economy has always been agriculture. I mean, as early as in the 1950s, Jawaharlal Nehru had said everything can wait, but not agriculture, and agriculture is still waiting for the large-scale reforms that need to happen. There has been improvement. We have the PM Kusum program for solar pumps. There has been cleaning up of the subsidy regime in fertilizers, but agriculture still has not achieved the income level that makes it viable for farmers, which makes farmers feel prosperous. Mind you, India's output in food grain output has been stupendous. So how did the government do that? So they increased the procurement to provide the farmers a guaranteed offtake of whatever they produce. That has acted both as stimulus for demand, but it has also acted as a means to get the necessary quantity for the National Food Security Program, which, as you know, now India has the largest food security program anywhere in the world. 810 million people are being given free ration. That is one aspect. Now, if you look at how they have modeled the welfare aspect, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Scheme has been tuned and fine-tuned to create assets in the rural area. It still could do more, it could still be better, and the money that has been spent on it has created employment at the intersection of the urban and the rural economy. The third part of it is the infrastructure play. Now, infrastructure and real estate, has a multiplier effect on 230 sectors in the economy. And that has, again, infrastructure has provided jobs at the intersection. It has created demand for steel, cement. It has created demand for other services. It has also propelled travel within the country. So these three. Now, all of this is happening while in the parallel, the government revenues have gone up. If you remember that GST, which is one of the biggest reforms that this government has done, there are two actually, GST and rural electrification. These are two major reforms that have happened in this government, and both have contributed phenomenally. So when you see the GST numbers, when it was started, it was under 1 lakh crore. Now the average is between 1,60,000 crores to 1,80,000 crores. And that money comes in handy to fund investment for the states to fund investments in their domains. It also comes in handy for the center to spend money on infrastructure and welfare programs. Now we have the PM Kisan Yojana, we have the Narega, we have the Ayushman Bharat, we have direct money transfers. So all of these, there is a balancing of the welfare aspect and of the growth aspect. That's the beauty of how this is calibrated and done. There are no sudden moves, barring the one episode in 2016 of demonetization, but there are no sudden moves otherwise, and the trajectory has been steady. Post the pandemic, actually, India has done far better than any other major comparable economy.
Okay.
If you look at the biggest driver of change is digitalization in the services, which is driven by the combination of Aadhaar and UPI.
Based on the findings of the review, what are the suggested policy recommendations for fostering economic growth and addressing any identified issues?
So India's three challenges are really how do they make agriculture more viable, which means that you have to liberate it, make it more. So any business requires the freedom to contract, leading and following sort of transactions, whether they want to buy imports or sell products, which is called in business terms as the backward and forward linkages. That is one big challenge, and I hope that, the startup world takes up some of the ideas there. The second challenge is to migrate from a coal-based and fossil fuel-based energy economy, because, India imports 86% of its fuel needs. Its power sector is backed by 49% of coal-generated plants. And these things have to change, and the transition has to be funded. That's the second challenge. The third challenge, which is now we are visible all over the world, is the challenge of artificial intelligence, which will affect some of the job creation in the services sector. India employs the largest number of people in the IT and services sector. So the government has to think about this as to how these sectors can be saved. There is a recent IMF report which says that between 40 and 60% of jobs, current jobs can be affected by artificial intelligence. These are the three challenges. And when you look at these three challenges, the big worry that you would get is that how do we sustain this growth? And that is the question that this economic review addresses. It says that it can be done, that it has been done before, and India has sort of journeyed through three different crises: domestic twin balance sheet crisis, the pandemic, and then the global financial volatility.
Thank you so much for the insights on the Indian Economic Review 2024. It was a pleasure to have you with us on Akashvani.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on highlights of the Indian Economic Review 2024. The participants were Shankar Aiyar, Economic Analyst, and Rajesh, Laikh, Anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on Aiyar. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on Aiyar Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at aiyarnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.